If you haven't set your goals for 2024 yet, then this video is for you because I'm going to catch you up on how I've been stepping into the new year just a little bit different than the norm or what most people have. I can't even tell you how good it feels to pull out the vlog camera again and get back to just creating. So I wanted to first, before going full blown creative mode, catch you up on a little bit of where I've been, what's been going on behind the scenes, and just kind of take you along with the ending of 2023. I feel like this year was a really transitional year of kind of figuring out what works, what doesn't, and there are some really important lessons and I think a really needed season that happened throughout the year. And so I'm going to dive into that a little bit, but first giving you a little bit of recap on the end of 2023. So if you follow along over on the YouTube channel, then this might not be a surprise, but last year I had spent a lot of the year working with a company, working with some really amazing clients, working on their marketing, working on so many things that just really lit me up as far as the creative process, building out some offers for their agency. And while I did love it, it ended up not being aligned, which is okay. That happens, changes happen. So towards the end of the year, I did end my contract with them and transitioned out of that. So for the last bit of 2023, it was quite a bit of just letting down. I had gotten to the point where I was extremely burnt out. The hours were just not mixing, and I had really gone into a place where I had wanted to I had gotten to a place where I had scaled back my agency and wanted to collaborate and work with the team a little bit more. And I absolutely had the most amazing team. I loved them. I loved pouring into them and mentoring them every day. I worked with some really, really great clients who I still love, and they've been following me on my journey, and I absolutely love their support. But it ended up being the point where it was pulling too much from me. So coming out of that space and then kind of digesting a lot of it was a huge letdown. And so I really was prioritizing rest at the end of 2023. And there was a lot that came to it. So towards the end of that year, I really spent the last few months just feeling super exhausted mentally, physically, and realizing I needed that downtime, which for an Enneagram 3 is very hard for me, especially leaning towards a type A personality. But I ended up learning how much that white space was needed in my schedule. And if I wanted to get my creative spark back, then I knew that. Previously in the year, I had scaled down my agency, and I knew that I wanted to restructure it in a way, and I needed this white space in order to kind of figure out those fine tune and those details of how I wanted it to look. So while I was taking a lot of time to rest and just kind of transition out of that with no expectations, it was also the holiday season, so it gets crazy. We had Hanukkah, we had Christmas, we had family fly in, we have birthdays too, so it's a constant birthday rotation in our house with our 3 kiddos, my husband, family, and so it gets busy. And I feel like coming into February, I've finally caught my breath a bit and been able to get my footing. So this is why I think it was perfect just to kind of bring you guys along and be able to kind of share just what's been going on and how I'm jumping into this. And I think the most important part, especially as a mom, is I was really able to spend some more intentional time with my kids. But at the same time, too, there's always a downside, is I was so sick for the longest time. My kiddos got sick, but then I feel like I got hit the hardest. And I think that was the biggest wake up call to I think just my nervous system was just shot. And I don't know if I think the tipping point was this last partnership that I worked with, and just working in that capacity just put me over the limit. But I think it's been probably years of just so much stress. And so it was a lot of sickness, and I feel like I just could never get out of it. I swear I was sick for like 3 months straight. And then through that too, because it was such a transition, because I was still dealing with a little bit of just working through some negative loops from the past year, there was casting a lot of doubt. There was working through a lot of mindset and kind of rebuilding back what people had taken or I had let people take. And so I really just let my mind digest that and trust that. And I feel like the best way that I could describe this is walking through just complete darkness, completely blind, with only being able to feel that maybe there's a step right in front and to just keep going. One of the things that I've always kind of held on to is that the clarity comes in the action. And while I knew that this is going to be for a reason, it doesn't make it any less comfortable. So if you are going through one of those seasons, I hope you know that it's totally possible to be completely terrified, but to also keep moving because it gets better on the other side. And so I think going into that season with no expectations and not putting any pressure on myself, while I did try to sometimes because I wanted to go full blown with everything I've been working on in the agency in the background, I knew that I needed this space if it was going to be something of longevity. And I knew that my clients and my team and support system would be there when I was done. So that I think was the biggest thing that kind of pulled me through. At the same time, knowing like I was so excited to get that clarity and get what the end vision I knew would look like, or at least feel like. And so I think some people talk about this, like I think the most thing that I can call it or compare it to is like the dark night of the soul. If you've ever heard of that term, it's just kind of one of those like very dark blind chapters that you walk through, and like I feel like everything kind of gets torn down and then built back up when you're on the other side of that and you process that. I think sometimes they call it like a death of a life, and the best way to define it is just that you kind of just get rid of everything, you shed everything. And so with that, I really was striving for that alignment and that balance. And even when I didn't know what I was doing half the time, or I questioned if I could actually do it, or just like when it was going to end, it did come through really great. So as we go into 2024, I know that I am definitely looking for things that are built with more, not necessarily balance, but alignment. And if you follow me over on Instagram, then you will see that really I need the space to thrive in creativity. So I've named this year, or part of the year, my creative era. And that's jumping into so many things that just feel good, feel aligned, and energetically fit me in my season. And so one of the things that I am really bringing into 2024, and instead of making goals and like making myself just overthink everything, which as a planner, that's what I want to do, I am going into with what feels good. So I may switch this up. I may do goals later in another month and maybe make them more particular, but I'm just kind of sticking with some boundaries for now. And for me, that is really making sure that I'm not putting myself in a 9-to-5 box, especially that I work for myself, and especially since I'm a creative. So sometimes my creative energy is either off during the day, during a certain part of the day, or during just a day in general. And it's because I need a little bit more sleep. Maybe it's I had kiddos that were up at night. We also have 2 puppies still. And so and sometimes the seasons, like honoring my lower energy during the winter really allows to have a really powerful and intentional next season. So spring and summer. And I think that we just need that rest even more. So I know that with more alignment will come more clarity and more genuine joy. And so that's what I'm leaning for in this year. And I think if I could, I usually will always pick a word, but I think if I did have to pick one, which I'm not 100% sure, but I do know one word that I'm really leaning towards is intention. So I really want intention behind where I'm putting my energy, where I'm putting my time, where I'm putting my emotions. And that comes from relationships to boundaries to, especially one of the things that I've been working on is intention in our home. And so we live, I feel like, in a smaller space for sure with 3 kiddos. Our layout's very quirky in our house and I do love it, but it does get a little overwhelming. And so one of the things I've been working on is decluttering it and making spaces really intentional, as well as making sure that the loops are closed. I've been really focusing on that because on top of being intentional, I'm not leaning maybe more towards minimalism, but just intention in general, because I'm also leaning into the era of just romanticizing my life. And for me, that honestly is simply having my favorite creamer in my hot cup of coffee and listening to my favorite Audible book or podcast on the way home from drop off. And that is just my me time. And so I get really excited about that. I also get super excited when I'm reading my book at night and I just crawl in, I make my cup of calm and I have the puppies up on snuggling me, or a kiddo sometimes laying with me. And it's just kind of that peace and quiet. So there's definitely some things throughout my day. Sometimes it's even like in the afternoon, especially during the summer months, just having that sunshine, going and sitting out in the sun for a few minutes. So there's certain things that I really feel like you can romanticize your life. And so I'm bringing those practices in. And while I'm not quite sure what exactly these are, like I said, I'm just going in through with these ideas versus like pinpointing everything, because I feel like they're going to reveal themselves. So it's a very, I don't know if transformational is the right word for this year, but it's like a curious driven year. And so I'm super excited for it because it is going to be like that throughout both work life and home life and as a mom, and just kind of restructuring things and rebuilding things the way that feel really great and that will endure even the hardest of winters. And I think that it's been needed for a really long time. One of the other things that kind of leads into that is making sure that I'm not necessarily saying yes to every single opportunity, but making sure that I'm getting out of my comfort zone. And this isn't only in like content and creating content and getting creative, but also in the way that I work with clients. Because if you are familiar with the agency, the Fairy Tale Social that I've built, I work very differently between creativity and strategy. I both love the creative process and the data-driven numbers and results. And so when I work with clients, they're very specific in the results and the things that we create. And so going into this year, I wanted to honor that vision, and especially the vision that every small business owner, small brand owner comes in with and what started their journey to begin with, and allows me to work alongside them and do some big things. And I don't want to reveal too much, but this is part of the offer structure that I'm restructuring in the agency, some services that we're doing. And if you are a small business owner or brand owner and want to be clued in on that, I do have a waitlist that's open. I'll drop the link down below if you're watching on YouTube or in the show notes on whatever podcast you're listening to, so that way you can get on the email list, because with that obviously came a brand refresh and just a big refresh in general. So I will be dripping some things out on the email list for those that are wanting to be first in line to get to know things and to take any of the availability that I'll have and I have blocked off just for this wait list. So I'll leave that in the link below. But that is something that I am super excited for, and just the changes that I'm bringing to the workspace in that area. When it comes to my personal life, I'm just, like I said, really focusing on intentionality and really rooting that and like mixing that, collaborating it with purpose, finding the connection in between. So I want to make sure that everything I'm doing really does have, or it feels like it has a purpose. And I'm not expecting perfection, like I said, and I know there's going to be bumps around the road, but I want it to feel aligned. I want it to feel good. And I'm just not going to put any pressure or expectations or shoulds, because I think the shoulds really get us. Other thing that I'm really bringing into the new year is creating more flow throughout my days. I've been having slower mornings some days. Other days I've just noticed that I have higher energy, and that's in the morning, and I will get up and get a little work done for the kids get up, or go get my workout in early. And some days I'm getting my workout in the afternoon, and I've let myself fully own that and really step into intentionally owning that I have the control of my time. Because I think where a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners slip into is that they try to fit things in a 9-to-5 box. And if you're an entrepreneur, you know that that just doesn't happen. And if you're raising babies and a business at the same time, it does not fit in a 9-to-5 box, and it looks different, but that's the freedom. And that's one of the ways that we crave freedom as entrepreneurs, and it's really important. And when we don't honor that and we try to shove it in that box, things don't work out the way that we want them to. Most importantly, I want to bring in the lessons that I've gathered throughout this last year and put them in my toolbox and bring them with me throughout this next year in 2024. And these are what they are. Rest is needed, and everyone needs a season of wintering, because when we do that, we allow things to regrow with more intention versus pressuring ourselves to grow things that should just be left. The next is that your power is not rooted in other people's opinion of you. What you do have power of is what you do with those opinions and how you let it affect your life. And I think this is something that we fall into so much. Everyone's going to have a say over you. Everyone's going to have an opinion of you, but what you do with that, you ultimately know the truth. You know what you stand for. You know, not necessarily, you maybe not know your identity or who you are during certain seasons. You may question it, but you do know the truth. And so usually where you find those struggles when people may have a different opinion of you. It can feel hard, but if you choose not to take that opinion and give it any weight, it feels very freeing. And I highly encourage that, especially if you are on a public space, if you are a creator, or it just are refining some of your relationships and creating those really great boundaries throughout the year. The next one is that no one has to understand your decisions or how you choose to live your life, because ultimately you are going to be the one that you have the longest relationship with throughout your life. And I think it really, really counts in what you let have control of your life, your emotions, and your decision making. And then the next one, and I think this is the most important, kind of the theme of last year, is that some of the most powerful transformations in your life happen in the darkest of seasons. And I want to say that I've had a smaller version of this, or maybe just doesn't feel as big because I'm coming out of one, but I think it was important. Was it comfortable? No, but I'm really excited and coming through with this new energy. And while it feels a little bit rocky getting started again and getting on camera and getting the podcast mic out, it feels good and it feels aligned. And I have so much to bring, and I'm so excited to just share that, because I know that that's rooted in so much of the purpose and so much of the things that I've built and brought along to share in a space like this, and to empower other entrepreneurs and other moms who are wanting to build businesses, and just other people who are ready to go after the vision that was set on their heart. Because after all, it was a vision given to you specifically for a reason, and no one else can do it the way that you can do, because it was specifically made for you. I know that I'm going to this new year just a little bit different, and I just wanted to catch you guys up on everything that's kind of been happening behind the scenes. So if you are watching over on YouTube, please say hi in the comments. I'd love to chat with you. And if you are listening over on the podcast, I would love to hear what you would love to hear this year and this quarter specifically on the podcast, whether it comes from mom and work-life balance, anything in the marketing world, small business and entrepreneurial world. I would love to create content that would specifically help you this season. So feel free to drop a comment over on YouTube, or make sure you're listening over on the podcast. And I would also love to know if any of the things that I chatted about are also on your list this year, or things that you're working towards. I know that even though we're a month into this, I think that there's really no timeline, even though everyone gets in the hype of creating all these goals and just visions that they want to have done in January. Most of them give it up. Like, research says they give it up by February. But I think that how you step into the new year is what counts. And even if you've had a slower start, tomorrow's a new day. Today's a new day. Right now, the next second, you can absolutely start setting goals or start taking action. And like I always say, the clarity comes in the action. The more you do, the more you'll figure it out. You don't have to be perfect every step that you take. You don't have to have it all figured out. And sometimes that's one of the bravest things you can do, is that 20 seconds of courage of just jumping straight into it, having no idea what's going to be on the other side, but knowing that you will find that clarity, having that trust that you will find that clarity, and then knowing that you're coming out stronger and closer to the best version of yourself that you want to create on the other side. If you are a small business owner or brand owner and you are wanting to get on that list, either to get marketing support or just to be on the wait list to be in the community and get the need to know and updates as soon as everything is refreshed and live, and getting that first kind of availability if you're wanting it, I would love to chat. All the links are going to be listed below. So I hope you're having a really great start of the new year. I hope it brings you everything that you are wanting and you're stepping into it so intentionally, and I will see you next time.